Ryan Dins, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, Greg. How are you?
Very well. We've got another bunch of questions that have come in the mailbox this week, so let's get stuck straight in.
Sounds good.
So the first one comes from Michael. And Michael says, I'm trying to follow the crypto trade station setup as recommended by Ryan Dins. I don't understand why you need to open accounts with both Independent Reserve and Binance when it seems you can buy crypto from both via your credit card. Please explain in more detail why we need to put dollars into Independent Reserve and also into Binance.
Yeah, so look, with cryptocurrencies, sometimes to my way of thinking, it's good to have several options, because I've lived through occasions in the past where service levels of certain exchanges have gone down, or even there's been even worse happening. So part of the recommendation to have several different exchanges is just one of, having a couple of options in case something goes wrong with one, especially if you need money at a certain time as well. The other reason I suggest Independent Reserve is the difference between Independent Reserve and Binance is Independent Reserve is pretty much a wholly Australian company. Binance is a Chinese-based company, although they operate around the world. And for getting Australian dollars in and out of the system, Independent Reserve is much easier from my experience. Binance has only recently allowed the ability to buy cryptocurrencies directly with Australian dollars. That's a very new thing. So they do that now, but I've not had much experience with that, whereas I've been dealing with Independent Reserve since probably 2014. Because they're Australian domiciled, you can link your bank account a lot easier. You don't need to do it with credit card. If you've got a self-managed super fund, you can even do that with Independent Reserve. They're set up for Australian investors. So I find that as a more ideal way for me anyway, for putting Australian dollars into crypto and getting Australian dollars back into the banking system. So that's my personal preference. If someone finds another way, if Michael's happy just doing everything through Binance, that's fine. But a lot of the time when I recommend several of these options, it's because I've lived through moments in time when that's been beneficial, So I'm trying to give people the benefit of my experience over time. Things change over time as well, though. So sometimes things are better, and sometimes I'm, even behind with some of the latest innovations with some of these platforms. But I do know from my experience, it's always better to have several options at crypto, because if things do go wrong, you want to have a few different ways to transact.
And just as an aside to that, and we discussed this in our recent video after all the crypto volatility, the system withstood that stress test pretty well, right? So do you think that as the system continues to grow and expand and mature, that having those different options for different exchanges will be less of a consideration, or do you think it's still worth doing?
Like, this is quite long term, but my vision further on the future is perhaps like companies like Binance and Independent Reserve will need to adjust their business models, because both of them are centralized entities. And my take is that we're moving with crypto, we will move to a decentralized world. There are already decentralized exchanges you can use, like Uniswap or SushiSwap or 1inch. They're a little bit harder to use if you're new to crypto. So that's why I suggest the centralized exchanges to start with. But I think as we go along, what will happen is more power will come to the individual who will have their own decentralized wallet. And from that starting point, they'll be able to transact with whatever backend provider provides the best deal for them at a specific point in time. I think that's the way we're going long term, but we're obviously not there yet. That decentralized future is the dream of crypto and of blockchain.
Yeah.
But right now, centralized entities play a pretty important part in making things easier and fulfilling regulatory obligations and other stuff like that.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to next question from Peter. It says, hi, Ryan, I joined your new money investor service on 5th of May. Since then, I've read your articles, monthly reports and emails. However, I am not sure how I can put this service to use in terms of my investments. Are you going to supply some detailed directions on how to put this service to practical use, or have I missed something?
Yeah. So in a word, yes, of course, we'll give practical investment recommendations in the monthly report we just released recently. We had a couple of investment ideas to start off with, plus I think more than the investment options themselves, it was the strategy behind each of them. I think was interesting, and I'm not going to say it now because I want people to read the monthly, but read the monthly and see what we're specifically recommending with both those investments, and you'll see the level of thought and analysis that we're putting into this. But at the same time, we are taking our time with the service. We're not rushing in to suggest a whole lot of names before we've managed to address the why. And I think that's the way we're going to take this service. Each month, we'll focus on a key topic, and then usually by the end of it, we'll have some way to invest through it. And I think the other point would be, and this is what we discussed a lot when we were thinking of this service, is that I think the information and the insight and the research we're putting into this service has applications beyond what we might recommend specifically in the service. Understanding how the monetary system's interacting with the economy and markets and things is, pretty, I don't think anyone else is doing this to the level of detail that we are. And I think understanding this up front will perhaps allow people to make better decisions around their own portfolio, independent of whatever we say. And also, if there is any times of crisis, hopefully we'll be ahead of the game in understanding exactly what's happening, because we're looking at this ahead of time. We're not just reacting to whatever happens down the line. So I think there's a few ideas there.
Yeah, and I think just to expand on that a little bit, this is really about trying to explain the sort of the intersection between the old monetary system and the new digital monetary system that is evolving, and by understanding the demise of one and the rise of the other, you can position your current portfolio without necessarily having to move it all into digital assets. There's some things there that that you can gain an understanding of what we're trying to talk about, which will help you make decisions about how your portfolio is structured. The other thing, just to point out there though, is we have discussed, once you've got your foot in the door of crypto, we've discussed how to generate income from cryptos. And I know we've got something in the works. We've been mentioning this, but it's nearly ready to release some specific details and specific investment advice on how to actually go about generating that income from cryptos, right?
Yeah, that's coming very shortly. We're just testing it, getting the report, making sure we've explained it as well as we can. And we're actually going to just touch upon the first and most easiest way to generate income from this new world of finance. There are other ideas to create income that we'll touch upon later, but we're going to start with this, this idea of generating income from stable coins, which we go over in a lot of detail in one of the welcome reports. And it's amazing, but you can make double-digit returns on cash savings right now in the crypto ecosystem if you know what you're doing. And our first report on that's coming out very shortly, maybe a couple of weeks, that will explain how to do that and show you how to do that in a pretty easy way if you're interested.
Yep. And then from there, once we sort of establish that good foundation of understanding, there are stocks that are listed on traditional exchanges that are sort of dabbling and are a part of this sort of new system as well, which we will look at down the track as well. But as you said, it's taking it slow and making sure that we have that foundation of understanding first.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's the way we'll see the investments go. We're going to start a base, and then it will expand, and it could expand pretty rapidly once we've managed to get the basics down and get the direction going. And then once we've establish that foundation, I think the investment recommendations will get quite exciting from there.
Yep, absolutely. Next question from Alan. I watched your a new game presentation recently and joined the subscription service after that. I've received and watched many of the emails you have sent, which I found interesting. My question, for want of a better way of putting it, is what exactly should I be doing now? More specifically, although I have a strong math and computing background, I have no experience in market trading. Do you have some specific advice on how to get started trading and broking platforms and accounts, etc.? Unless I am mistaken, the new game presentation was a lot about becoming involved in digital currencies, but I feel like I have missed that part about exactly how. Are you going to be giving specific advice on how, when, whether to get involved in mining, staking, buying, selling, or other ways of exposure to the digital currency market? Thanks for all the relaxed and informative videos so far. I hope you can help me on the path to translating this into some concrete action. So I guess this is similar to the question before, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. As a politician might say, I refer to my previous answer. So yeah, it's we will we'll do all that. It's just the pace of which we're doing it is going to be a pace that hopefully the majority of people can follow.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Next one, Christine writes, I have read that Joe Biden is going to develop a US digital dollar, which will replace fiat money and put the end to Bitcoin, as he and the Fed are totally against it. The new win will be the blockchain that will be used to develop the US digital dollar. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really interesting question from Christine, and I think we touch upon it a little bit in the monthly report that we just put out. I think she wrote this in just before we got that out, so hopefully Christine's managed to read that and had a read about where we see the sort of reserve currency status of the world going. What are the possibilities? And a digital dollar is definitely one of those. And I think what we might do, and we talked about this before, is we might have another discussion about the monthly report later and actually talk about this whole digital dollar thing, because I know you've got some thoughts on how the US dollar, behaves in a world where fiat currencies are collapsing. And I think that would be a really interesting discussion, because I've read some of your stuff before on that, and I think that would be a really good indicator for us in trying to work out where we are in the cycle of the current monetary system.
Yep. So I guess the answer is stay tuned, Christine, and we'll get to that in more detail next week. I hope you enjoyed that preview from New Money Investor. To get access to the full video and much more, please click on the link below.